Now let's move on to variables. Variables are super important in programming because they allow us to define things that can change while the game is running, or before the game is running. We used them before in our functions when we said float x and float y. So now let's make it so that way our circles can do something in real time with the game. First of all, variables are things that our computer has. So for example, our computer has an x and it has a y, or more specifically, this function has an x and a y, not anything that the computer has. So there's no variables defined for the computer. We will define some variables for the computer right now. So whenever you're adding a variable, there's only one rule: add it at the top. And then we need to create a variable. So there's a few different types that we have. We have float, and a float is just a number with a decimal. Also, you can do / to add comments, by the way. An int is a number without a decimal. And a string is text. A boolean is true or false. A p-image is an image. And there are so many more, but these are the main ones that you'll be finding yourself using. So, the orange words are really specific. They are our types. Whenever you create a variable, first you say the type, then you say the name. So let's call this my float. Let's call this one my int. And you can really call them whatever you want. I'm going to call this one Chloe, after my cute little dog. And this one is going to be my bool, and this one is going to be my image. Okay, now we're not going to use them all today because there is a bunch of stuff here. But another thing you can do after you've done this and you've ended your sentences is you can give them a default value. So we're going to say my float equals, and then any number you want. So I can say 5.5. And now with my int, I can say equals and then 2, but I can't say 0.5 on an integer because it cannot have a decimal. So no decimal. For the text, I could do text, but you'll also see that I don't even have to do this and it'll still run. It's just a default value is what it's called. Great, so now that we have our variables, we're actually going to leave these for now, but let's add a new one. Let's call it float grow factor. And let's make another one. Let's call it float size, or current size. Again, they're just names. You can call them whatever you want to call them. Just make sure you understand what's happening. We're going to set current size to be 1 by default, and grow factor to be, let's say 0.5 by default. Now, let's go down to draw. We're going to increase our current size by our grow factor. So we're going to say at the bottom here, current size plus equals grow factor, which is actually the same as writing this. It's the same as writing current size equals current size plus grow factor. And I'll add a comment here. These are the same. Okay, great. So now I need to do one more thing. Instead of 300 here, we're going to use our variable current size. And when I press play, you can see that all of our circles now grow over time. Because they are variables, they're able to change while the game is playing. Fantastic. Now let's make it so that way it follows our mouse. And to do that, there's a bunch of special processing variables that we can use. I'm going to write some of them here at the top. So we have width and height, which is the width and height of the screen, of course. We have mouse X and mouse Y, which is where your mouse is. We also have an image width or an image height. So I could say something like my image dot width or my image dot height, which is the width and the height of our image, of course. Now, in this case, we want to use mouse X and mouse Y. So let's go down here, and we're going to replace X with mouse X, and we're going to replace Y with mouse Y. When I press play, that's strange, there's only one circle now. And that's because they're all in the exact same position. They're all by the mouse. So we're going to increase by X for this one, and we're going to increase by Y for this one. Now when I press play, you'll see that I have 4 circles that are bound to the mouse. Let's change these positions here so that way they're a little nicer. This one's going to be -100 and -100. This one's going to be like that, and then +100 Okay, negative, negative, and let's see this, and that one's fully positive. Okay, great. And there we go. So now we have this neat little project with 4 growing circles that will follow the mouse.